Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of 1000 Gurus with me, your host, J.R. Yona Cruz. So today's episode features Dr. Arnel Calvario Ripkins, our first guest of Season 3. Wow, I'm so excited we finally got here. Let me read his bio, or just a quick snippet of it. As a visionary leader in the dance community, Arnel has inspired countless individuals through his work as founder of Kaba Modern, former executive director and former board president of Culture Shock LA, former president of Culture Shock International, and as a member of the Kinjaz, while also empowering future leaders through his global education programs, leadership tools for the dance leader, and Roots Before Branches. He recently was the closing speaker for TEDx UC Irvine this past May and is a contributing author for the recently released book With Love. In addition to this, he also works as a full-time doctor of occupational therapy for the Long Beach Unified School District and is working in collaboration with Andy Ho, another guest of mine, for Culture Shock LA to expand his dance therapy program Awesome Shock LA in 2025 to provide an affirming and impactful space for dancers with disabilities. So this episode was by far one of my newest favorite episodes of the podcast, by far. Half of this conversation honestly was just me listening to him and wanting to hear more from him. He's really just such a wealth of information and knowledge and experience, and we couldn't even cover half of the topics that I wanted to bring up. So hopefully we can eventually schedule a part 2 sometime in the future. But needless to say, it was a huge honor to have him on my show, and I hope you guys learn as much as I did from this conversation. So without further ado, hope you enjoy this conversation with Dr. Arnel Calvario Ripkins. Hello everyone and welcome back to 1000 Gurus. Please welcome my guest, Dr. Arnel Calvario Ripkins. Well, Arnel, thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. I will have already read your bio, but I kind of just wanted to, for the audience, kind of hype you up, or how the kids say, glaze you a little bit. Because for those who don't know, Arnel, I'll have links to like his bio and everything in my show notes. But Arnel has been an inspiration and a pioneer in the dance community for a long time now. Part of the reason why I moved down to SoCal and UCI and Kaba Modern was because of what Arnel has done in the dance community. So yeah, founder of Kaba Modern, 1992, part of the Filipino American club at UCI, Kaba Bayan, when you were a student there, and KM's like legacy and impact has had so many ripples across the dance community. The way I was telling my friends about having you on the show is, it's like your dance inspiration, sort of thing. So for me, it's an honor. Kaba Modern's done amazing things in the community, and then the ripple effect that Kaba Modern dancers have done in the community since then has also had ripples, and in so many ways in the last 30 years. Yeah, one of the biggest reasons why I moved to SoCal, being on Kaba Modern myself, was pivotal for my dance career because of, learning from my oldies and super oldies, like the mindsets and things that I brought to other things in my life. And we talk about this in the episode with Andy, of how, I don't know, it's something about the dancers in our community or just kind of built different, or something in the water, especially at UCI. And I think we've had a few encounters over the years, and I know we're not like super close, but every time that you stop by the dance team, or every time I've talked to you, you've had this grace and humility and generosity of spirit that I really admire and appreciate about you. And you're still involved too, and you're like helping out. You've done a lot with Culture Shock as well. And I'm just really excited to connect and share your story with my audience. So thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, fam.
Yeah.
I know that's the amazing thing about Kaba Modern. It's no matter how much time passes, there's that thread that kind of connects us all. Yeah. And your years on Kaba Modern were like exciting, fun years to like witness and be a part of.
So if you don't have any clarifications, we can just jump right into it.
Sure.
So my first question is kind of like with everyone, is your origin story. I will have linked your TED Talk in the show notes as well, so I highly recommend everyone check that out. It's a great story, but maybe just a quick, like for the audience, where'd you grow up? What were your main influences, and any like pivotal memories of your upbringing that stand out to you?
Yeah, so I'm the child of Filipino immigrant parents. I grew up in Harbor City, which is nestled like right in the middle of Carson, Torrance, Hawthorne, and then also Palos Verdes, Lomita. So I was really blessed to kind of live around and grow up in diversity. And the good thing about living at that era too, because I grew up in the 70s, 80s, 90s, that was the explosion of hip hop culture. And so everything I knew about dance, I learned at the park. And so I really credit like that entire, for having so many dope OGs, whether it's DJs, MCs, B-boys, B-girls, poppers, lockers, there to just kind of invest in the youth. because I was definitely not confident. I was very shy, but it was those art forms that kind of I connected to and that where I kind of found my voice. So yeah, I'm proudly a South Bay, a South
Yeah.
Bay boy.
Right. I know like the SoCal area is like a conglomeration of culture, and especially
Mhm.
like you said in that area where a lot of the dance pioneers and everything was going on that time, and it's foundational for what a lot of what we do now in the dance community is.
Mhm.
So I guess following that, so how did like you growing up in that area, how did it lead you to, joining or going to UCI and then eventually
Mhm.
I want to connect the threads back of like how
Yeah.
Modern's born, but are there anything else that was like the impetus for that?
Yeah, so I'm kind of a mosaic of a lot of different experiences. So, in addition to hip hop dance and locking were probably my foundation. I also grew up doing Filipino cultural dancing. And so that took me to Cerritos as well, where there are a lot of dancers and DJs,
Yeah.
and then at the parties. And then I also I went to this Catholic school in the weekend, CCD, in Long Beach. So I also connected with the B-Boys in Long Beach also. So I'm a kind of a blend of all those cities in addition to my city. And what I learned from Filipino culture dancing, because my cousins together, we were like a youth dance troupe for my aunt, who was a very, very famous cultural dance instructor, is I learned teamwork and performance quality and discipline and also culture, obviously, because we were learning cultural dances from different regions in addition to their home region, Aklan. So I also learned the importance of knowing where these dances come from. Similar to hip hop, if we learned top rocks, like we knew that started in the Boogie Down Bronx, right? So everything was just so rich, I would say, and then also the culture of being responsible not to only to yourself, but your community and who you represent. That was already that was my entire upbringing. So combine that also with being a Boy Scout and, understanding like a troop, you know what I mean? A troop of Boy Scouts. That's another thing I learned about teamwork as well. So in high school, I had a dance crew and that was the era of party dancing, a lot of the things like the Running Man, the Cabbage Patch, the Troop, the Smurf. And so it was like battles at the parties. And we were, from Harbor City, a small crew. We'd go to Cerritos and get smoked. One of my favorite crews was Funky Junction in Cerritos. And it's so funny because later on, I recruited a lot of them into Kaba Modern.
Nice.
So after high school, I was looking for that right when I got to UCI. I joined the Filipino club UCI Kababayan, of course, and we had the culture night. And my entire Filipino American experience was the cultural dancing and my hip hop and locking. So I asked the president, is there a club in existence? Can that be a section in the Filipino American culture night? And that's when he mocked me a little bit, teased me. He said, yeah, just create your own team. And, we'll call it Kababayan Modern Dance Troupe. And I was like, okay, let's do it. And I held auditions and then it was born. And then I found out that he wasn't serious, but it was too late.
Yeah.
Kaba Modern was born.
Yeah.
I already had 14 dancers and it's funny because the first year they didn't trust us that we were going to be good. So they stuck us in the middle, hidden in one of the suites, just in case we sucked.
Okay, moving on.
All right.
Yeah.
But it ended up being something that people like connected with. I think people of that era it resonated with them. That's like their high school experience. That looked like something that happened in their hometown. So the auditions the next year doubled, tripled the next year, and it just exploded. And then that's where we saw like Samahang Modern, Pac Modern, all of these moderns popping out in every Filipino club. Then it went to the Chinese clubs, the Vietnamese clubs. All these clubs were exploding with these dance teams. And then the next step was, because we were performing only at clubs and car shows, because the promoters were like, hey, if we invite these groups to perform, they'll bring their friends and it'll be good for promotions and growing our events. Is we didn't want to just perform once on stage because the clubs and the car shows were great, but the stages were so small. So that was the birth of Vibe, created by a member of Kaba Modern, Joseph Lee Singh. He was in a fraternity called LTD. And creating Vibe, which is actually going to be celebrating their 30th anniversary in 2025.
Dang, it's crazy.
It's 30 years since
Yeah.
it started. Also was the ripple for creating all the dance competitions. Because prior to that, we had no hip hop dance competitions or even just dance competitions in general outside of like drill team and cheer and song. So it actually created an entire scene of these, dance competitions like Maxed Out, Prelude, Bridge, later on Hip Hop International, World of Dance, all of those competitions popped up after. So we had no idea. We were just trying to take space and make space for others and do something grassroots, community powered, powered by college students.
Yeah.
We had no idea that it was going to be anything bigger than just, for our immediate community, but it ended up being like worldwide. So
That's
pretty crazy.
Yeah. So Vibe was the first like kind of hip hop dance. Like I didn't know that. What do you think
Yeah.
was like why do you think it, I guess, I don't know, maybe. So I know that hip hop dance, like 70s, 80s and whatnot, it was there. And then I guess in the early 90s, right, there was this sort of, it seemed like there was a hole that was filled and then this made sense to a lot of people and it started catching on, right?
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely battles and jams and parties.
Right.
All of those things were really thriving in the late 70s, the 80s, and the 90s. I think somewhere in the 90s, a lot of the freestyle scene started to be hybrid with choreography, and much props to Mop Top's Elite Force, Buddha Stretch, and such, because they are the pioneers of hip hop choreography in New York. All of that started evolving and morphing, and that's why I think the spaces started also evolving, where people wanted to go to battles and jams, but they also were craving, theater expressions and stage as well. And that's kind of at the time. That's when the birth of the dance competitions kind of, I think it came from that energy.
Right.
That hybrid energy.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of factors in play. And then it was just kind of like the right time. It was, that sort of, what's it called, intersection of all those things. And it created this sort of new area while still combined and from everything else.
Yes.
And then Kaba Modern was like right at the beginning of that.
Yeah. And it's kind of crazy because when I look at it, at the root, all of these art forms that we're allowed to, we're guests in this culture. That's like created by our Black brothers and sisters in New York. And of course, with a lot of influence from our Puerto Rican brothers and sisters. People always ask me, like, why do so many Filipinos and Asians, why are they doing this thing? Why is our scene so Asian, And it's funny because when we were creating all of these spaces, we weren't thinking about that. But when I look back on it, it's because these are university created like collectives. And a lot of these events were created on university campuses. And unfortunately, there isn't equity and accessibility in those spaces as it should be. It should be more diverse. It should be more inclusive. And all these clubs should be like very diverse, but we're not, So there's a lot of Asians in these university spaces creating these collectives or dance families, as we call them.
Yeah.
Another thing that comes into play with it too is Asians are often invisible, right? And we also don't grow up with love languages that are necessarily words of affirmation and such. So we operate more in like quality time, spending time together, and acts of service, right? That's our more common love languages. So there's a part of us that wants to express, that wants to be seen, that wants to, be affirmed. And I think the creation of these events and these teams allowed a lot of people who are kind of muted versions of themselves to feel like they belong to something and who they are can be seen and celebrated. Yeah. Because we're not talking about like 5 teams, right? We're talking about jumping from Kaba Modern to like over 30 in just a couple of years, and to the point where we have hundreds all over the world now, right? Clearly, people are really craving a sense of belonging and a sense of being seen. And that's global, So, yeah, I mean, I don't want it to be all Asian, but I see that the need was probably always there, for Asians to be seen and to have this experience. So I guess that's kind of my theory.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. I was thinking that exact question. You just answered it, which is, so like, how does the Asian sort of participation or influence in this sort of scene, like, where do you think that comes from? Yeah, you just answered it. But more specifically now, I'm curious, that Filipino sort of generalization. It's, we sing, we dance, we do nursing. I wanted to ask what your thoughts are on that as, one of the pioneers of this. As, it seems like a lot of Filipinos, we gravitate towards these sort of art forms, singing, dancing. Do you have any sort of theories on why that might be?
I think it all goes back to colonization. As people who've been colonized by Spain and, have been oppressed by many other countries. And also, we're a third world country. What we clung onto for our identity in the Philippines was our cultural dances, our cultural music. That was our expression, and that's how we held on to who we were, even through colonization and after. So it's no surprise that, that we as Filipino Americans embody that, being child of immigrant parents, right? And also, I think it's also that thing too, like I mentioned earlier, because verbally expressing yourself is not a primary mode of expression in our culture. Singing, dancing, and all of that is, it's a way to kind of express yourself, have a sense of community because you're doing it all together, and have fun, without being judged because everyone's just doing their thing, you know. And it's freedom, it's liberation, because when we are truly comfortable being able to sing or dance, it's liberating. So it's liberating, it's connecting, it's, it's communal. And individually it's a release, right? So, again, that's another thing that I just grew up, right? I'm not a singer, but I have many aunts and cousins who are amazing singers, And I have to say that growing up, my parents always encouraged me to play an instrument, you know what I mean? Like any instrument. So it's been a part of our knowing of being in this world is singing or dancing.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I wanted to ask now on dance, I guess. From the 30 plus years from Kaba Modern, I know you've been dancing before that, but I wanted to get your perspective on how you feel like dance has changed from the 90s or 80s until 2024. What are some of the big things where you're like, wow, I've noticed this as someone who has that perspective?
Well, first of all, my knowing of dance and learning of dance and absorbing of dance was person to person. So we weren't dancing in front of mirrors. We were dancing at the park, facing each other, learning from each other. There's also a culture of respect and appreciation. So when OGs invested in you, you always show your appreciation, your ultimate respect. And that's also really deep in our culture as well as Filipino Americans. So growing up that way, even when I started Kaba Modern and we would rehearse in the studio sometimes, because mostly we're rehearsing outside in parking lots and between, buildings.
Yeah.
That was foreign to me because my training is not in front of a mirror. I learned everything. But the roots, that's why the roots of Kaba Modern there is a lot about respect and, like you said, like showing reverence to your oldies and like appreciating each other and growing together. It's because the founders of Kaba Modern, that's how they learned. We learned through elders and through people who invested in us. And it's really about passing that on to the current and to the future generations, right? It's generationally, it's a generational investment. 2005, because I was there, that was the advent of MySpace, Facebook, later on, of course, YouTube and Instagram. You saw a lot of things. The great thing about that is prior to that, if you wanted to see another crew or dance team or dance family performances, you'd have to grab that VHS or beta tape and, hope you can get a copy or borrow a copy from that. But once YouTube hit, now we have access to everyone. And it was exciting in the beginning, but there was a weird transition from 2005 to maybe 2007 when people weren't sure, do I like this better than actually learning in person? You know what I mean? Do I want to go to a live dance competition or do I want to just wait till the clip drops on YouTube and watch it, like binge watch it?
Like an experience, you doing it digitally versus in person.
Yeah. So it was kind of an interesting time. And especially when YouTube lifted off, all of the live dance competitions started struggling. Some of them ended abruptly. It was also the advent of dance shows because prior there was definitely things like In Living Color where you saw the Fly Girls and of course music videos. But now we had this, America's Best Dance Crew and later on some other dance shows as well. And so people were just eating up, watching it, on TV. But what was missing now was like that person to person investment and that culture of appreciation and respect that you get prior to the advent of social media. Something was definitely lost. So I think what's interesting though is when the pandemic hit, I feel like we kind of bounced back because now that we were like lost human connection
Right.
and being able to see, it actually rubber banded back to where we are now.
You could feel more drastically.
Yeah, now people want to come to live events. And even though there's so many dope things like Snipes and, other offerings where people like other media offerings, people want to be there in person and they want to feel the energy of people. And now it's an interesting hybrid after the pandemic where we have global access through social media, but people are showing up battles, dance competitions, dance showcases, theater shows. They're packed, they're full, they're sold out. Because now I feel like we've reached an awareness and appreciation of what it's like to share space and have experiences in person, collectively and individually, and also embrace like the access and the ability to share, virtually as well. I like where we are right now.
Yeah.
There's also been a return to the investment of understanding culture and history and getting in those lanes of appreciation versus, appropriation, where I feel like when it was those confusing times, people were just consuming without any care for respecting the OGs, respecting the pioneers, all the cultural things. Now people are really like advocating for that, which is so like, it just makes my heart full. That we're back there again, while also pioneering new pathways of ways to share and innovate how dance is, proliferated throughout the world, digitally as well.
Yeah.
So it's an exciting time.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's a great perspective. And I feel like there's a lot of takeaways there of seeing where it started, where it went, where it is now, and how it's okay, this is a good space we're in now.
Yeah.
I wanted to pivot a little bit. So I know that you've still been involved in dance a lot. And I think, your impact is still being felt in the dance community. I wanted to ask, how has your role shifted? Starting Kaba Modern in 1992 and staying for a while, and then came Legacy, and then there's the ABDC, and then there's Culture Shock and everything you've been doing, and now the stuff you're doing with Awesome Shock and everything else, right? How has your perspective shifted, or like your role in those organizations shifted over time?
Yeah.
I'm asking as a person, it's okay, you're pioneer of these things, you're starting these things, you're involved in these things, and you're seeing it grow, and you have like maybe a vision of how you want to contribute to those spaces. How has your perspective or your role shifted since then? And, what's been your contributing that sort of vision that you have for yourself in those spaces?
Yeah, because obviously with Kaba Modern, that was in Kaba Modern, I was in my 20s, right? So that was the time of let's just create everything, limitless energy. And, who needs sleep? You're just so excited to just build. After I graduated, from UCI, and then I moved on to, figuring out my career path in the health, at least the health side of my career, I definitely moved from, an active director to advisor, like kind of coming when needed. And that's when I was able to spread my wings and join Culture Shock LA. And Culture Shock LA really came into my life in my late 20s, going into my early 30s. And Culture Shock LA was really like the bridging of who I grew up with as a Boy Scout who loved community service and who loved being in the community, and also really investing in cultural appreciation of all of these dance art forms. So that was where I became an evolved leader because I became executive director of Culture Shock, and it's a nonprofit organization. So I had to learn about the nonprofit world, grants and budgets and positions and bylaws and strategic plans and such. And so that was cool because I liked learning about that stuff, but I had to learn it pretty fast. And luckily I had amazing leaders with me to learn all of that stuff with. And so during that time, I was still advising Kaba Modern and also creating KM Legacy, because all the alumni I grew up with were looking for a place now to perform. And some of them went to Culture Shock, and some of them actually who weren't like community service leaning still wanted to perform and in those competition spaces or at clubs. So it was interesting to create KM Legacy as another space for Kaba Modern dancers and also friends of Kaba Modern to kind of still have a sense of belonging and still have that high sense of training in a safe space that seemed exciting. That's going to push them to even grow more. And so that time of my life was very busy because I felt like I was in a relationship with dance, you know? And it was also the time where that up to that point, which is kind of wild to me, I wasn't out yet because I was just so busy. I think subconsciously maybe I was keeping myself busy not to really even think about my identity as a queer person. But I did have a lot of eye-opening experience during that time of my life that were really like leading me to finally come out and live my truth. And I think once I did that, things kind of like rocket shipped like really like higher. And I was able to build a lot of things that I think really were transformational for me, you know, because after that is when I finished my doctorate program. I really went full steam with Culture Shock LA and co-created with my other leaders benefit shows, all our after school programs, all our youth teams, you know, Future Shock, Mighty Shock, Mini Shock. And then, you know, at the end of my 30s, going into my 40s, I started really thinking about when people ask me my career, why do I default to occupational therapist, you know? My career is as a dance educator and as a doctor of occupational therapy. And we're often like influenced to have one label, but I'm an intersectional human being. So I'm a dance educator and I'm occupational therapy. And I started thinking about what things can I create that actually brings both of my expertise together as well. And so that's when I created Awesome Shock, because I knew that especially our neurodivergent youth, they often get turned away from dance studios. I had a lot of kids I worked with at Children's Hospital LA and then later on at Long Beach Unified School District where their parents were sharing that they love to dance at home. There's no space for them to dance. And so that's why with Culture Shock, grant funded, I was able to create these free dance after school dance programs. And I went back to my roots. It's just hip hop dance and locking mixed together with sensory strategies from my occupational therapy background and created this program that now I'm building with Andy Ho, who's another one of your guests. And it just feels so exciting to see that all my things can also come together to offer something unique to the world that's really needed. Yeah. And that's been super rewarding. And when I started kind of going into these other, I don't call them passion projects, I call them purpose projects. Because I think passion is what you do in your 20s when you're just excited about a thing, you're fueled by energy. Later on in my 40s and now I'm, 51, I do only purpose projects, things that align with what I think my purpose is, my God-given purpose in this world. And so Awesome Shock is one of my purpose projects. And because I'm so involved in this direction where everything I do with dance needs to have some kind of purpose, because also I'm more protective of my time. Every decade, I become more protective of my time.
Yeah.
With Kaba Modern, I just want to be a founder. And I really trust like Andy and Jen Sango and all these other incredible leaders, Jason Bueno, Asaya, all these incredible humans who were incredible leaders for Kaba Modern and Kaba Legacy to be the leaders and mentors for Kaba Modern. I trusted that generation now so that I can really focus on my purpose projects. And I'm always going to be the founder. I'm Yoda to them. So I still help, I'll still be a supportive force, but I can also sleep peacefully knowing that there are these other incredible leaders who will take care of them. Because with Kaba Modern, since it's a college group, the greatest need is really support for the directors, the leaders, because they're, 18, 19, 21.
Yeah.
So having these, we call them Jedi Council, the Jedi Council of Advisors be able to mentor and invest in these leaders, and the leaders invest in the dancers, makes for a much healthier, and safer experience for all the dancers.
Yeah. I had a question on that. That's one thing that I'm very curious about is like leadership and how you see or approach cultivating those leaders. Because like you said, it wouldn't be on someone like you to touch every single dancer and be like, here, let me mentor you. But it's like helping to develop those leaders who can now take ownership of those teams and entities and, you trust that they're going to do an amazing job. How do you approach that? Like when a leader comes to you asking for guidance, or what kind of sort of overarching message do you lean into for those leaders?
Yeah, I mean, the one advice I always tell people is that life is a combination of making things happen and letting things happen.
Mm-hmm.
So there are certain things that you have to take charge of and you need to go for it, and certain things that you also have to allow to happen because you have to rely on other people who have a higher sense of knowing for their contribution to that project or that thing. And there's also like a trust in God and the universe. You also have to let things also just happen naturally and organically as well. So part of leaning into that is knowing that when you you find that balance, there's going to be times that you're just going to kill it. You're going to find that right balance and smash it. And there are going to be times that you're going to make mistakes, but the mistakes are opportunities to learn. And as a 18, 19, 20, 21-year-old, that's exactly what you're supposed to be doing, right? As long as it's not super harmful or, toxic to the dancers, there's a certain amount of mistake making that is good for your character, for you to develop as a person. So that's what those advisors are there for, to kind of impart their wisdom and guide these leaders and, having those incredible, like, I did it moments, but also to really affirm them in that, but also when they make natural, as everyone is going to make mistakes, like really help them be introspective and figure out what do we learn from this, for not just for Kaba Modern, but for your life, as a human being moving forward. And a lot of people, myself included, there's certain things, whether you're a leader in Kaba Modern or just, or a member or a choreographer, that there are lessons you learn during that period of time that you do take into your life moving forward. Everyone has their own version of, I learned this in Kaba Modern and I brought it here. I know for even job interviews, sometimes they ask me, some of what is something you're most proud of? I can pull something from Kaba Modern. Or what's a difficult situation that you learned from? I can pull, a situation for the dancer or dancers I worked with that were challenging that, so there's always something to gain. But the key is to lean into that growth mindset of whether you're winning or whether you're navigating challenges, you know what I mean? You're always going to be growing if you choose that.
Right. I love that. Yeah. I think that answers it. I was kind of just asking as a stand-in for like leaders, like what sort of advice you think could help them grow into that.
Yeah. Yeah. With leaders specifically, it's have the courage to take charge, but also know that you can't be everything to everyone. So you really have to rely on a communal effort. And we really now, for every time we have leaders come in, we have an onboarding where we go over like effective communication, strategies for navigating, group dynamics, self-care, because that's something that a lot of people don't talk about with leaders that is just so incredibly important. Yeah, and cultural appreciation. So these are like things that for the leaders, for Kaba Modern and for Culture Shock, like all the groups I work with, I spend time doing that. And I did teach a leadership course called Leadership Tools for the Dance Leader. And a lot of the content from that are from mistakes I made as a young leader that I learned from.
Yeah.
And I just kind of put it together in a course mixed together with my organizational leadership courses to offer to specifically to dance leaders, because I wish I had someone,
Right.
helping me. I definitely am okay with what happened, but maybe it could have also been easier if someone was mentoring me or someone, had some advice to impart to me when I was figuring things out for Kaba Modern.
Yeah, definitely. I like that. It's kind of, you learn from your mistakes, but also it's key to pass that along to the next generation so they can stand on those shoulders and, make the space even better than when you left it, right?
Yes, yeah.
Quick question on that. So those resources that you compiled, is that for like where can people access that, or is it just for the specific groups of people that you mentor?
Yeah. So I actually created it during the pandemic because leaders were just reaching out to me, DMing me or emailing me or texting me and just asking for so much advice, because during that time, all the teams were either disbanded or they were on break or hiatus. Mm-hmm. And then a lot of things were also coming out in the dance community, like even just now people were speaking their truth about sexual harassment and all these other like really dangerous, important, things to talk about. So leaders were like coming up. So I created it as a virtual program, 5 sessions. And 5-week sessions, so one time a week for 2.5 to 3 hours virtually. And I didn't know that it would, it's like one of those things, just, once you create it, then it just accidentally, so I did my first cohort was like only 22, but I did so many cohorts that I ended up reaching over 380 leaders.
Oh, wow.
In over 42 countries.
Wow, that's crazy.
So I kind of had to figure out also time zone. Like I would one cohort, I would hold it on the mornings on Saturday so I could reach all the Asian countries.
Right.
And I was like, I need to hold it at this time at a different day so I can now get the European countries. And the cool thing is with that, I also created a space on Facebook where they can also get together and I hold reunions and the cohorts just grow. So those 370 something leaders, I still create spaces for them to check in and I'll create like activities and breakout rooms and such. But in 2025, I'm going to try offering it in person at Movement Lifestyle. I'm still talking to Sean Evaristo about it and possibly maybe in Orange County. So I might try an LA cohort and a Orange County cohort because something's happening again where I'm getting a lot of people asking me for advice, and it's easier for me to hold a course where I can just deliver it in a more structured way and also more rich way and communal way than just, emails and phone calls like over and over. So I think I'm going to try that next year and see where that goes.
Yeah. So if people are interested in this sort of thing, or what would you recommend them to check out or reach out, or like how do they?
Yeah, definitely my Instagram, because I will usually announce it. And then I'll keep applications. Before I would announce it, leave applications open for 2 to 3 weeks, and it would fill up. So I'm going to do that again. But also next year, I'm going to have a landing page for my website.
Ooh, nice.
So that's one of the things that I like, website and, my TED Talk.
Yeah.
Those are things like all the things for myself have been on the back burner forever. And last year and this year, I tried to really say I need to make sure I take care of those things so I can continue doing what I do in a more efficient way. So next year, I'll also have a landing site where everything will be there as well. But it'll be Instagram and that website together.
Okay, so just stay tuned on your Instagram.
Yes.
And then you'll announce it.
Yes.
That's exciting. Now, I'm gonna say straight up, that sounds like I would want to do that. That's crazy. I don't know if I'm eligible.
Yeah, you could teach it.
Yeah, no, that's crazy. I feel like that sort of thing you're offering and have been offering, I feel like it's so valuable. In my own experience as like a leader on a team and trying to like create some sort of like structure or like something that you can pass on so that these spaces can be safe, can be productive, can be like fruitful for these dancers who a lot of them tend to be younger or, whatever stage they're in. I feel like that's so important for us to keep these spaces like that or keep it and improve it. Right. So I feel like something.
And even identity, like I forgot that the first sessions is identity and mission because we don't need another team that looks like another team. Right. Like when collectives come together, it's because of a particular reason, whether it's like a connection they have with each other or a specific leader that inspires this group. So I think that's important for leaders of organizations to also think about like, why do you exist and what do you want your mission and vision to be? And to understand that that's like going to be extraordinary as long as you spend time really knowing what that is before you like have rehearsals and start having auditions.
Yeah.
Start first with what makes you special. What is your footprint on the world? Because we did go through a time in our dance community where all the teams look the same.
It's just for the sake of dancing. There's no different.
It's okay to start with inspiration. Like every dancer, singer, spoken word artist, that we all everyone starts from inspiration where you kind of imitate or you just like really want to emulate like your idol. But eventually, as you grow past that, you take some of the sauce that's just yourself, put it into your inspiration, and you end up developing your own thing. And so that's when we think about dance, whether it's a dance crew or a dance company or a dance family, each one should have its own identity, mission, and vision, and they should know that before they ask people to join them.
Yeah.
Right.
I love that so much because I've had this conversation too, like asking different dance teams and project teams. So what's your, like, why are you here? What is the purpose and the values? I want to say something, but it's like everything you're saying is amazing. And I don't want to add to it too much because I want to cover some other things. But I've asked my own team this before I joined leadership. I'm like, we're taking on people And we're having all these culture problems because we didn't identify what our values are and what our purpose is. And so
Yeah.
let's start with that. And then we audition people and
Mhm.
interview and all that, filter them in so that now we're have this sort of common denominator. Because if we do it in reverse, we're going to come up with all these culture problems that we're having.
That's exactly it. And especially when you have to let someone go, if you weren't transparent with them from the beginning of what you stand for, then what is your basis for whether they stay or
Exactly.
not? You know, so to be truly ethical, that should all be worked out in the beginning. And that's actually every person that approaches me wanting to create or found a team. I have them like write your mission statement first. If do your personal mission statement to know who you are, then write your mission statement by yourself or with your leaders for your group. And then everyone that you take on your team needs to like support or embody that.
Right.
You know.
I love that. That's amazing. Okay. Really quick for this last section, I wanted to ask, okay, so I had questions on your TED Talk, but we're linking it. Check it out.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll have a part 2 if it's in the cards. But I wanted to ask about the book that you contributed to called, make sure I want to get this right, With Love. And it's oh my gosh, I'm missing it. It is What We Wish We Knew About Being Queer and Filipino in America. And so I haven't read it. It's on my list, and I don't know if this is too much of a teaser, but could you maybe share with us any sort of snippet of what your contribution was to that book was?
Yeah, so last year in 2023, this an amazing person, Dustin Domingo, he put a call out to all queer Filipino, Filipina, Filipinx people out there to write letters to their younger selves. And they said you can submit up to 3 because we're gonna do this collection of these letters. It's gonna be a book. So of course I wrote 3, and I picked different times. I picked when I was 10, just being confused and actually not embracing that. I picked right before I came out, and I picked right after I came out. And so I wrote those 3 letters, just hoping one of them was gonna be picked. And then I found out, it's funny because I found out the same month that I found out that I was selected for the TED Talk, I found out that all 3 of my letters were accepted into the book.
Wow.
And so, and everything aligned with each other because also when I did my TED Talk, that's the same week that the book came out.
Oh, wow. That's crazy.
So it's all kind of in tandem with each other. And so I've been doing like book talk panels, speaking on panels for the book release, and meeting also some of the other people who wrote letters, because there's 50, he picked 50 amazing human beings. And some of these letters are like hella funny. Some of them are very thought-provoking. Some of them are heartbreaking, so they're all so different, and they all like touch just a different part of the queer experience. And collectively, I think it's really rich. So it's such an honor to be a part of the book. It's a little bit, I was more worried about my parents because, over the last 5 years, I've been a lot more vocal about my queer experience. And that's scary for my parents who still think, it's true, queerphobia, homophobia is real. And I have been the recipient in recent years of, hate crimes and things and such. But I think there's such an importance to speak your truth and to for your own healing and for the chance that you might help someone else, in their healing journey. Just impart your experience and how you got through it or how you're figuring out your way through it. So that book is definitely a very unexpected blessing. I really wasn't sure if I was going to get picked. And so to have all 3 in there is such a huge honor, and to again meet the other authors. And it's ongoing, so there'll even be more panels next year. So it's just something I just continually look forward to. It's like the gift that keeps giving, So, and there's nothing like it, because to speak about your queer experience in the Filipino culture is also taboo, to be bakla. And, in the queer community, that's empowering, but it's still so much, it is degrading, in a lot of spaces, So yeah, on goes the fight for, speaking your truth and helping people feel affirmed in who they are, and also help people know that they're not alone.
Right. Nice. I like it a lot. I was about to ask for a snippet, but I think that's a good sort of summary of what it's about and what people can get from it and what they can learn from it. Yeah.
Yeah. One of my stories fell on 143.
Oh, really?
So if you
Nice.
are like, what page you're on, look for 143.
Nice.
One of my stories is on that page.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah.
What a coincidence. Is it so how's the book like laid out? Is it just like randomly, or is there some sort of format?
Structured.
Structured?
So yeah, I didn't even know how it was going to be laid out. I love the way Dustin organized it, because what he did is the foreword and introduction is like his story, and then he separates all the chapters into life lessons.
Okay, yeah.
And then the letters are grouped according to that life lesson.
I like that.
Yeah, so it's cool. It's a really good book. It's awesome because you can just open it up and just read, 2 or 3 pages just to read one letter, and then you can put it down. Or you can deep dive and be like, I'm going to read this whole chapter of all these letters and take that in. So I'm not a read write learner. I'm an audio visual learner. So I'm more like, I just want to open up, read something short, and then think about it, and then again pick it up again. So it's a perfect book for the kind of reader I am. So yeah, I think people would enjoy it. And it's great for everyone. For queer people, obviously, it's amazing to read these stories, but it's also good for all our allies, right? That they'll want to get a sense of understanding of what some of these experiences are like. So I think it's a great book for everyone.
Yeah, definitely. So I have a book summary website, so it's on my list. I usually do, audiobooks like Audible.
Yeah.
This one's only print, right?
For now. I told Dustin he would be amazing, And so he wants to do it. It's just so many letters, though, he has to figure out, but I think he should.
Yeah, definitely. It's on my list regardless, but if it ever drops on an audio version, I'm going to post up a book summary. Sounds like an amazing book.
Yeah.
All right. So anything else on that topic before we go to rapid fire questions?
No, I just want to say it's available. I mean, when it comes to books, it's always best to buy from the direct publisher, but it's also on Amazon, so it is easy to find. And either way supports Dustin and the amazing people behind the project. So,
Gotcha. Yeah, I'll link Dustin's website because I think that's what I have now in our brief. And so it links to that page that I think it's where we can order it from, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Cool.
Cuento
Nice.
books. Yeah.
Perfect. All right. So rapid fire questions. First one, Arnel, is called the billboard question. So if you could put up a sign for millions of people to see, what would it say?
It would say my mantra, which is give love, receive love, be love.
Next one. What is one of the hardest challenges you faced in your life, and what did you learn from it?
I did go over this in the TED Talk, but I would say finding out that I was HIV positive. Because I was 31 and I was in the last year of my doctorate program, and I was just battling, navigating, feeling like I was a fucking disappointment to my parents and that I was going to hurt all the people in my life while trying to finish my doctorate. So that was the hardest part, but I had no choice but to reach out to like close friends and lean on community. And then it also led me, because I found out I was HIV positive before I came out, which is crazy. So I did that process of telling everyone I was HIV positive. And then I went a year later, another round of, hey, also. So that time was very challenging because all of that was scary, emotional. It was a time where I didn't figuring out if I even deserved to live. I was navigating those thoughts. But I came out on the other side having a deeper appreciation for life and a stronger commitment to my purpose. And also, both of those experiences made me really embrace that it's so dope to be different, and it's good to be more than one thing. All the parts of yourself, the painful parts and the joyful parts and the in-between parts make you extraordinary in the world. So we should embrace it all. Yeah.
I love it. So good. Okay, next one, self-inflicted wound. So do you have a story about something that's gone wrong in your life that's your own fault and you can't blame anyone else because you did it to yourself?
Yes. When I went on academic probation for Kaba Modern.
That's always one of those.
That's a whole other story. Yeah. But yeah, I got an academic probation. I listened to a counselor who was discouraging. I actually dropped out of my bio major. And then when I changed my mind, they wouldn't let me back in. So, and I only had 1 year left. So it was really bad advice to tell me to drop a major. I was so close to finishing. So I had to add all my classes through ad card and get straight A's to prove to the university that I deserved to be a bio major. And that's when all my friends were gone. And I was like the only one left in my age at UCI. And I ended up doing it. I got back in 2 months before graduation.
Wow.
And then I graduated. But all of that time, that whole 2 years of figuring that out, I didn't know if I was going to get a degree. So I did that to myself.
Yeah, definitely.
But I also got myself out of it as well.
I think you're the second person to say academic probation.
I fucking did that to myself.
People are like, no, I did that to me.
Yeah.
I like it. Okay, if you could redo one thing, what would you do differently? And most of my guests be like, I don't regret anything. Yeah, but for the spirit of the question, if you, as a thought experiment, what would you redo?
I mean, if I could redo some of the mistakes I made as a young leader, because I don't think I have the lens now of an awareness of like kind of stepping outside of just being present and having a very like wide perspective. Because I think when I was a young leader, I was just fast. Let's build. It's so exciting. I didn't take as much time to just stop, be present, integrate the lessons, and then move on. I was just rapid fire. I was just so excited to have the opportunity to create and build and do fucking cool things with my friends. But if I could do it over, I would have stopped and like really thought about what am I learning? What am I experiencing? What ways can I do things better? Am I even taking the time to celebrate too? I would have done a lot more of stopping.
Like more stopping, reflecting, and celebrating, like you said.
I didn't do that until I was in culture shock. That's when I was like, because now I had all these leaders, like I had, co-leaders, and we were doing that for each other. Whoa. Let's think about that. Oh, is that in budget? So yeah, I wish in college, even though I'm grateful for that time, I stopped a little bit more. Yeah.
I like it. It's good advice. If you could give your younger self advice, what would it be now? If you haven't already touched upon it. Any age, any range.
I would say at every age, because we all battle insecurities. I would just say like, you're enough. Who you are as a human being is enough. And you have worth in this world. You will always make mistakes. You'll have your moments of triumph, but you belong in this world. You carry a unique purpose, and you're enough.
In the last few years, what new belief, behavior, or habit has improved your life?
Boundaries. I'm a people pleaser, so I learned especially in the last decade, when I started placing boundaries around what I'm able to do and what I'm willing to do, everything in my life got better. I would say I still spent most of my 30s just rapid fire, which is also why I was single for most of that time, because I feel like I was in a relationship with all of my purpose projects and my degree. And, but once I did that, it was pretty immediate, because once I had boundaries, I started having better self-care practices. I started scheduling myself in my own calendar, not the appointments, not the obligations to other people, and it wasn't until that moment that I ended up meeting my husband, because literally the next year after I fully integrated that practice, I met Dustin in the most unlikely place. And then, he became my husband. So yeah.
Nice. Love it. I always say, at least in my perspective and my experience or my philosophy, is that any relationship can be improved with stronger boundaries.
Yes.
I think it's like that sort of when the boundaries are not there and you don't know where I end and you begin, that's where all that conflict comes from, with families, relationships, friends.
Yeah.
But when you strengthen those boundaries, that's when you can fully love someone, because now you know where you guys are.
Yeah. And your relationship with yourself.
And that's
right. That gets strengthened also, because you have a better knowing of who you really are. The good and the areas for growth.
The areas of growth. I like that. Nice. Who would you call successful, and how do you define success?
I think success is different for every person, because what's meaningful to each person varies. So I would say success is a high level of achievement in something meaningful where you can enjoy it yourself and also impart something to someone else. I don't know. I know that's kind of vague.
Yeah, no, but I like that. It's a good framework of you're doing something that's meaningful to you, and then you can share that with other people. Is there anyone that comes to mind that embodies that? Someone you know, someone you don't know, famous, not famous?
I would say my husband. I think it's important to really admire and respect your husband while also knowing what you bring to the relationship. But what I admire and love about Dustin is that he doesn't care a lot about what other people think. And so he's fully present in everything he does, and he's 100%. But he also balances that with he's such a compassionate and kind person. So I think that's success because he can more boldly jump into things because he doesn't really care about what people think as much, you know. So I admire that in him. Yeah. And he's so successful in all the most important things, which is being a good to your family, being good to your partner, and being good to yourself. He's so great in all of those things.
I love it. If you knew you couldn't fail, what would you try or what would you be doing now? If anything different.
If I knew I couldn't fail, I would probably move from the TEDx to the TED space and just go for it. I still think that's something I'm just going to continually to grow personally to get that space, but I'm very afraid to do that because the TEDx was already its own journey. But yeah, I would just go straight for that the TED space and go for that. So.
Question, I don't know if you'd know the answer, but what are the steps to getting to the TED stage?
That is something I'm still exploring because I feel like it's by invitation. And I think your TEDx talk, like a TEDx talk needs to be a certain amount of like impact and reach.
Okay.
And then they'll pull you to the TED
it might
space.
Be an invite sort of thing.
Yeah. But also I think there must be some kind of investment because to go to a TED conference is like a lot of money. So even to be in that space requires a true investment. For me, I'm not willing to spend that money to be in that space, but if I end up being in that space, I will fully be grateful for it. But it's just mainly maximizing impact. If I have any opportunity on that scale to share anything from my story that might help other people, that would probably that's the scariest thing I've ever done is my TEDx talk. Because you're talking about other people and building for other people is fun and it's not as scary for me. Right. I can speak, public speaking is not hard for me for other people, but talking about something vulnerable is really scary for me. That's why I actually went for it, is to really challenge myself. And it was the most frightening experience, but also liberating at the same time.
Right.
So that's the one that I would do if I wasn't scared.
I see.
Right now.
Yeah, definitely.
In reality, I'm like, I need to build over this for a couple of years.
Right. Yeah. Nice. I like that. I could see that though. I'll manifest that for you.
Thank you.
What is one of the best or most worthwhile investments that you've ever made in either time, money, energy, or anything else?
The most worthwhile is always going to be my family and Dustin and my doggy. It's truly unconditional, and so it's the most important thing in my life right now. Everything I do is for my loved ones and for myself. And, so that's always going to be the most important investment of my time. Yeah. And hopefully because my goal right now is to be a dad. So, so everything feeds that. Like everything I do with work feeds that dream for Dustin and I. So, yeah.
I love that. Last couple. Favorite recent purchase in the $50 to $100 range that has impacted your life the most in, let's say, the last 6 months?
Oh, God, that's such a good question. I've never been asked that. Oh, 50 to 100.
We can change the parameters, but that's kind of the base.
50 to 100.
It's like a relatively inexpensive purchase recently, nothing too crazy, but it could be.
Trying to think. Sorry, no, this is rapid fire.
It's all good.
I'm gonna say this chain. So this is from Rare Vintage. It says Yoda on it.
Oh.
And it's a gift to myself.
Yeah.
So I just feel really powerful, and I feel like it's taking me into like my next chapter of life. So I think this is a good purchase, like right now, like symbolically, because it has an energy that's carrying me forward. So yeah, I'm gonna say this piece, this Yoda piece.
I like it. It looks good. Last rapid fire. Any favorite books, movies, videos, articles, or media that you share or recommend the most?
Let's see.
Besides your TED Talk, which is great, and besides the book with love, which I think everyone should check out. But besides that, any other media you recommend?
I mean, I love podcasts, so I'm trying to think. Well, have you seen Words That Move Me by Dana Wilson?
I haven't.
Yeah, that one's really good for dancers because she interviews all kinds of different experts in dance. And I've been enjoying that one a lot lately. Young Pueblo, have you heard of him? So Young Pueblo, I started following him first on Instagram, and I love his writings. But his books are like incredible. They're just poems. And again, it's just what I like short, easy to read. but his writing is really impactful to me. And I think it just resonates with where I am in my life. So he has several books and they're all great. My favorite one is The Way Forward, but Young Pueblo. He's the bomb.
Nice.
On Instagram, I also like this illustrator called Dev, I want to say Dev the Pineapple. Let me just look at it up real quick because her stuff is artistically fun, but it's really says a lot of things, a lot of social justice themes that are on hers. Oh yeah, Dev the Pineapple. Devin Blow. She's incredible. I love her art, but it's really the messaging and the words. And I'm a quote person, so she sometimes takes these incredible quotes and then puts like an illustration with it, and it's really powerful. And I think we're just navigating such crazy times. And next year seems like it's going to be even crazier. But her stuff really mobilizes me, empowers me, and also grounds me. So Dev the Pineapple. Nice. I also like We the Urban.
We the Urban. Yeah.
I also like We the Urban.
Okay, nice. Cool. Yeah, we'll link to all of those. I think those are really good recs. Okay, so we're in the final section. So I always like to end with gratitude. Shout out to my mom for teaching me gratitude. Arnel, what are you grateful for?
I'm grateful for loved ones, chosen and blood. I'm grateful for my journey, wherever it's going to lead me. I'm grateful for Dustin and Kenobi's our doggy, our puppy girl. I'm grateful for this time, and yeah, I'm grateful for the possibility of something better.
And last, any final ask for the audience? Any ask from them and or any final takeaways that you'd like them to take from this conversation?
I think the last takeaway I would say is to ever be a master and expert in anything requires a commitment and embracing of always being a student. So everyone carries worth. Everyone has a unique purpose or multiple purposes for why they are here on earth. And so just lean in with, growth mindset and always know that who you are matters and you're also never alone. We're all connected. And yeah, and if I have an ask, I would ask people to also flourish yourself, but also flourish other people as well. I think where we go in this world requires both self-care and community care, and they're intertwined. And for us to go further as human beings, we need to really invest. We need to go back to basics and really invest in self-care and community care.
I love it. All right, Arnel, that is it for questions. Thank you so much for everything. Honestly, this is one of those episodes where I'm just going to listen again for myself. So much.
Well, I also want to give you your flowers because it makes me happy that, first of all, you're doing this incredible podcast. I love the ethos that's carrying this podcast forward. And also even the TikTok stuff that you do with your girlfriend and the dance stuff you do outside on top of your career. You truly are an example of someone who isn't defined by one identity. You embrace it all helps each other. And, as a founder of Kaba Modern, it makes me super incredibly fulfilled to see someone from my family living their truth in such a loud and amazing way. So,
thank you so much, Arnel. You're gonna make me tear up. Yeah, I'm happy to make someone like you proud, just to be my authentic self and to following your example too. You're everything that you do, I feel, is an example for people like me to live our truth and do what we're passionate about and to give back to other people, especially. So thank you so much.
Got you, bro.
All right. So I'll do my final sign off. So thank you guys for tuning in. I hope you guys learned a lot as much as I did in this and enjoyed this episode. Just a reminder to always be kind to others, especially yourself. And remember that you can always learn something from someone if you just take the time to listen. So thank you guys for tuning in.